Welcome back to At This Moment. It is Thursday evening. Currently, it is 11 p.m. Eastern /7. 8 p.m. Pacific. And we are jumping through the hoops here. I've got Mike Rosecliff as my guest tonight from the ArcLight Institute, and you can find him on Twitter as at ArcLightInst. So it's ArcLightInst, and thearclightinstitute.com, I believe. Is that correct? And welcome back, Mike.
No worries. And yes, that is correct.
Okay, great. All right, so I don't know how much. I'm going to look at the chat room and see. Dead air now. I feel so bad. Okay, hopefully we're back on. That's hilarious. Let me also give a quick shout out to Wolf Spirit Radio and JP Prometheus out there for simulcasting this show on his network as well. So we are live on both Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and Wolf Spirit Radio. So thanks very much, JP, for simulcasting us. And JP has a question, so I'm going to ask you that question after we continue on with austerity measures. So welcome back to hour 2, and I got my seatbelt on, man. It's a ride we're on right now. So.
Yeah, I think Roger will tell you, man. Seatbelt, sometimes it isn't enough. Sometimes you need like that 5-point harness thing going on, like out of a race car or something. But I hope I'm doing a good job. Like I said, I hope I'm doing a good job of kind of connecting some of the dots. And again, I guess I know I don't sound like a lot of the other voices in alternative news radio. I'm not a join the hands, sing kumbaya, we all love each other, kind of guy. But I do try to provide the narrative going like, hey, there is a way to make a buck from, what's going on. So, and I'm very forward about that too.
Yeah.
So in terms of, we were speaking about the austerity measures, and that's where you start to see that line from, the economics research, that I do, which again, I'm literally, while I'm talking, I have stock charts open on the screens in front of me. So it's kind of my thing. It's what I do. But beyond that, when you start to see a lot of the socioeconomic, or what I call, I guess the socioanthropological narrative start to play in, where you start to see certain trends in social behavior, and then certain trends start on the economic side, and you start to go, well, if this happens, what happens over there? And as that picture, I've kind of compared what Looking Glass does. Have you ever done a jigsaw puzzle that's got a little picture on each piece? Now, you can hold up each little individual piece, and you can look at that little teeny picture. Or you can start to put that jigsaw puzzle together, and all those little pictures make a really big one. And that's kind of, I guess, the most elementary way I have of describing of how Looking Glass works. And what's cool is, if you've done a jigsaw puzzle, as the pieces start to fit together, you start to do the puzzle faster and faster and faster, because you're able to see what the bigger picture is. So that's really what I guess, if somebody asked me to describe how does Looking Glass work, that's really on the most simplistic level, that's kind of how it works.
Wow. Okay, so you're gathering data from different areas. Can I ask a little bit more about that? May I? Okay, so you're feeding in streams of information into Looking Glass, and it pops out, said prediction. You don't have to. I'm assuming that it's proprietary, and you don't want to give out all the information. But about how much information is being fed into this thing?
I'm going to answer that question with how it works is less important than that it works.
Okay.
But to give you a glimpse, there's keywords, for instance. There are programs out there that I know that do big data mining that look for keywords. This is probably more than I've said yet on the air about how the program works, but I'm going to anyway.
Okay.
Like I said, it's Farewell to Friends tour. Context to which words are used in. All right. It's enough. I mean, you go to do a Google search and you put in one word, or you go to do a Yahoo search, you put in one word, and all it's looking for is that one word. Context, and the ability to assemble that context almost instantly is kind of what makes Looking Glass, I think, a little bit different than anything that's ever been built like it or close to it before. So
interesting.
Beyond that, the rest is classified, of course. Mm-hmm. We have double super secret, top secret, probation, atomic top secret. But apart from that, that's about as much as I've shared really on the radio as far as how the program works. And it harkens back to the fact that there is simply just so much content available right now that, and the speed is really what's critical. It's really not so much the content, but the speed to which there is real-time content available. You can start to paint that picture. I said, it's like, you sit in a room full of 100,000 people and you just imagine listening to every single conversation at the same time. You can paint a very accurate picture of what that group of individuals is thinking. So that's kind of how, again, on a very elementary level, how the software works. And it's like I said, it's very exciting. But in terms of getting back to, like I said, the austerity measures thing, I think that's possibly, if not the, I don't know, how should I put this delicately, most intriguing thing that LG has discovered so far is that, to see, what about austerity measures in the United States? I mean, we have people that'll kill each other over a pair of sneakers.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when there's that? I mean, look what happened in Greece. What did they do? They raised the retirement age by 2 years and they went nuts. It's like, you have any idea what the United States is going to look like? If there's real austerity measures, real, social program cuts and stuff like that. So the reality there is that's just one component of, that's only one component of, I think something that's going to be much bigger in terms of an economic reset. And I think what the BRICS nations have done very successfully so far, and I speak only from an economic standpoint, is I think they've done a very, very, very good job of insulating themselves, from a lot of what's going to happen, in terms of the mayhem associated. Because you got to remember, those are producer nations. You got the Middle East is becoming far less relevant in terms of oil production. And I've often joked around and said, what you call the Middle East without oil? A big sandy bombing range.
Yeah.
Without that industrial advantage there, the Middle East as
well, that and poppy. Don't forget the poppy.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what Afghanistan is for, of course.
Yeah.
But the reality of the situation though is the industrial producer nations, oil with Russia, China with, by the way, largest industry, and V so eloquently points this out, really tremendous stuff. Largest industry is banking, then you have manufacturing, of course. But the manufacturer producer nations all of a sudden are finding out that their value is far more tremendous than they could have ever imagined. And they went, you know what, we're done using the US dollar. We're gonna avert the banker fees and so on and so forth. We're gonna avert the IMF and so on and so forth. And to me, that's just simply an act of economic chaos. That's forward progression. That is a wonderful thing. And the ironic thing is, like I said, I think what we're seeing, those BRICS nations were created by the very Anglo-Western banking system that they've now taken over. And
mm-hmm.
you kind of have to admire the poetic irony there. But yeah, I mean, again, from a purely capitalistic and purely investor standpoint, I just look at it. I look at what's going on now arbitrarily, going, okay, what am I seeing? What can I do to better my life, better my assistant's life? What can I do right now for me, not for anybody else, for me? Right now, based upon what I'm seeing, and obviously, the first thing I did was do 7 months of live radio going, hey, guys, this is what's really going on. Mm-hmm. But now it's like, and you asked earlier, why am I, all of a sudden it's like, the end of the ArcLight radio tour. It's like, well, yeah, because now I'm going to start acting on my own information. And like I said, it wasn't a publicity stunt what I did. It's, the software is very real. It's incredibly powerful. And now it's my time to go, okay, let's make some money. But in terms of any other forward-looking information that I may have. I mean, I'm open to questions. I mean, questions are free. Answers cost money. Answers without sarcasm are more expensive.
Well, I always prefer my answers with a bit of salt. So listen, okay, here's a question from the chat room, and actually from JP threw out a question. He's the one simulcasting this show on Wolf Spirit Radio, and he says, do you have any insights into the halving of oil pricing last year? So when it was, cut in half, do you have insights into that? And did Looking Glass explain that to you? First of all, that's a great question, and I will try to answer it with as little sarcasm as I possibly can. But first of all, we were way ahead of the curve, in terms of the narrative. And I have to say V was also on this. I think I may have beat him a little bit in terms of the chronology, but I said what you're seeing is what's called the weaponization of commodities. Okay, the weaponization of commodities. That is a massively important thing to understand, especially for those that are trading the futures markets or trading the commodities markets or trading ETFs that have various commodities underlying them. What we're seeing is a commodity
or the weaponization of commodities. It includes gold and silver, by the way. Mm-hmm. Okay, I lived in New York up until about a year and a half ago. Okay. Now, I remember gasoline being as high as, in some places, I want to say in Westchester, $5 a gallon. So let's scratch our head for a second and go, okay. So up until a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at where I live right now, which is highly classified.
Okay. You know, that's right. I asked you what time zone you were in, and your answer was, it depends.
It depends, yes. In terms of
my favorite answer ever, by the way.
Yeah, it's like, what time zone are you in? Well, what time zone do you want me to be in? Now, the reality is, I mean, we saw something I thought I would never see again in my life, which was under $2 a gallon unleaded 87 octane pump gasoline. So we scratch our heads and we think back to what we learned in high school economics, and we go, laws of supply and demand. So the question is, what changed? What decided that gasoline goes from $5 to $2 per gallon? Did demand decrease? Answer, no. If anything, it increased. More people on the planet, more vehicles, more machines, more requirement for those various petroleum products, up to and including diesel and home heating oil, for those that trade WTI, Brent, crude, all that fun stuff. Did the demand decrease? Answer, nuh-uh. No, it didn't. So we scratch our heads again and we go, well, that leaves only one other logical conclusion we can draw, which is supply increased. Yes, it did. That was a move by the BRICS nations. Okay. To aid along hyperinflation in Western economies. Because let's think for a second. Remember, I talked about connecting the dots.
Yes.
Let's think for a second. $5, $2. That's a $3 difference.
Yeah.
Where is that extra $3 per gallon per driving individual in the United States alone, never mind the rest of the Western world, but where is that extra $3 per gallon not spent going? Well, it could go into what I call the real economy, which is a local economy, retail and services and goods and so forth, okay? Or it can go directly into a 401k, an IRA, a structured product, a retirement package, a 502b, all right? So what the Far East did, or what the BRICS nations have done, is they went, okay, you want to play games? Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to flood the market with cheap oil. And what's that going to do? I made a prediction several months ago. Matter of fact, it was probably one of the first things I openly spoke about on the radio in terms of, here is some real hard data metric information from Looking Glass that, as far as I can tell, we're very much on track for. And that was Dow 28,000. I started talking about that at high Dow 16,000. We've been through up to 18,000, and 18.1, 18.2. Mm-hmm. All that extra liquidity in the system is helping inflate an already inflated U.S. equities index. All of them, and balance sheets and so forth. So that additional liquidity generated from cheap energy, the $2 a gallon pump gasoline and less expensive home heating oil, all right, is going to, it's going to fuel the market caps of companies and say, hey, look, our sales are up, a gazillion%. Isn't that wonderful? And then, of course, people are going to take their extra liquidity that they have and go, oh, now is a great time to invest in structured products, my 401k, my IRA, increases savings. And what they're doing is it's one of the stages of what I call the multi-stage rocket booster, or multi-stage rocket of hyperinflation. And so in terms of the cheap energy, that may have seemed great. It was in no way reflecting of demand, or really supplier demand for energy. Really, well, it was in a way, because just they opened up massive amounts of reserves and went, here you go, have fun. And that's what I call the weaponization of commodities. Even the valuations placed upon metals are really not adhering to any fundamental rules of economics at this point. You're seeing commodities used in basically an invisible war that's being fought out in broad daylight every single day.
Wow.
And it can be seen in the fixed income market. It could be seen in the U.S. domestic equities markets. And that's why I've been saying, I go, that wasn't a favor. Where did all that cheap oil come from? All of a sudden, even another point that V made was that the Ghawar well, it's the largest oil well in Saudi Arabia, is pumping, a vast majority is pumping water. Putin is sitting back right now, laughing his keister off, just going, I win. Have a nice day. And it's not just him. It's the BRICS nations in that 105 odd BRICS nations that are trying to avert the usage of the U.S. dollar. And that's, hey, welcome to the wonderful world of economics. He figured out what was going on in time to avert a lot of inconvenience and a lot of unnecessary headaches. And what we're seeing now is a growing China. I mean, if you want to take it one step further, you look at the possibility of the yuan being added to the SDR to be considered a world reserve currency. Now, what do you think happens when the Chinese announce, hey, we're going to even 25% gold back the yuan? Mm-hmm. Game over. That's it. Have a nice day. And that's kind of the economic landscape that I'm seeing. And as I said, when you put the jigsaw puzzle together piece by piece, the faster the more information I get, the more information I want, because it's like, oh, wow, this is great. Now I can make educated trades on here. I can make educated trades there and so forth, amongst other things. But I also realize that time is finite. That there's going to be this opportunity to turn paper into more paper, to which then to turn into metals. So it's been pretty wild to see what's going on. And again, that's the reasoning behind my, saying, adios amigo, so to speak, to, doing the constant Twitter thing and the constant radio thing. I said, well, now it's my time to get mine. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. I'm just a little, so, all right. All that extra money, the $3 per gallon that the U.S. driver is saving, you said is spending it where? And you explained maybe into a 401k, or you used a 502b, I think was another one. So, all right, cut to, please forgive me for my naivete, but so cut to, next, QT next year. I'm sorry, Q2. So in other words, QT, that's what, people call me that in the background. Anyway, Q2. So Q2 of next year, you're looking at all of that, extra monies that were put somewhere. What is the end game there? I'm a little lost. What's the end game?
What you're seeing in terms of the weaponization of commodities, and all that money pouring in, that you're going to start to see, tulip mania, so to speak. In a roundabout way, you're going to see a speculation-driven growth cycle that we haven't even begun to see really yet in the United States. And that's where you're going to see down 19,000, 20, 21, 22, and all of a sudden it's like happy times are here again. That's going to lead up to either a dollar implosion, intentional or from a black swan event for whatever reason, a dollar implosion. Now, what is worse? I mean, if you think about it, the Dow falling from, and I only use the Dow just because it's one of those things that I know a lot of people hear out of the corner of their ear on the evening news. So it's an easy reference point. But, what's really more frightening? Dow, dropping from 18,000 to, whatever, or 28,000. The end game there to me is, first of all, for those that know what's going on, there's a transference of wealth. And for those that don't know what's going on, are going to wind up economic road pizza on the information superhighway. In terms of
economic road pizza.
Economic road pizza, or what's the other term that I use? Fiscal fender ketchup.
Fiscal fender ketchup. These are coined, man. These are yours. Fiscal fender ketchup?
Yep.
That's brilliant. I'm sorry.
Fiscal fender ketchup on the economic superhighway. And it's either you know what's going on and you're able to generate that wealth consistently and generate that money consistently and turn that paper into more paper to turn back into metals, or there's the I'll just put it in my 401k and everything will be fine kind of mentality. And it's like, not that I have any problems at the moment having a retirement plan or savings plan, but what I encourage people to do is, at least, even if you're going to have a 401k or an IRA or a pension or something like that, really more of a 401k, Roth IRA type deal. I said, if you're going to have that, at least, if you're going to put your money into that, at least know what's going on. Okay? The notion of just handing over money and going, oh yeah, the fund manager will take care of it. Okay. Like everything's just fine. At least know what's going on. And that's kind of why, amongst other reasons, as I said, I did the alternative news thing. I said, I'm not one of these I'm going to come on the radio and I go, down with the government, and well, we're going to start a revolution, and we're all going to, join hands, sing Kumbaya, and do wheatgrass shots, which are disgusting, by the way.
I agree.
Seriously, like I said, if anybody, I've done my part, okay? Not only have I saved you financially, but I've also averted the indignity of having to do a wheatgrass shot. If you really want to know what it tastes like, my advice would be just take some grass clippings out of the lawnmower and chew on them for about 5 seconds, and that'll pretty much satiate your appetite for wheatgrass. Yeah. But apart from that, I digress. No, but apart from that, the reality of the situation, though, is it just amazes, especially my generation, in their 30s and later 30s and in their, later 20s. I mean, just how oblivious, they say ignorance is bliss. Not as far as I know. I'd rather know what's going on. Thank you very much. But how oblivious some people are to what's going on. It's like, no wonder why, and this is going to sound horrible to say on alt news, but I said, no wonder why there's a 20% or a 10% and 90% or an 80% and a 20%. It's like one in every X amount of people knows what's going on, and the rest of them are just in like zombie mode. Yeah. You walk down, like I said, you ask the average member of my generation, who's Janet Yellen? Who is Ben Bernanke? Who's Alan Greenspan? And they're going to go, are those some of the Beatles? It's like, no. But the fact of the matter is, at least, again, practical advice. I mean, I can come on here and do what I call doom porn, which is we're all going to die, and how we stamp our toe tag is of our own volition, and that does happen to be true. But, I try to offer like real solutions, like, hey, listen, this is what's going to happen. It's going to happen. But here's how you can maybe enrich your own life as a result of, knowing what's going on. So I consider this my public service for all of humanity, or at least the ones that listen to alternative news. 7 months, and your debt is paid.
Listen, okay, so let's jump ahead for a second, and since you're not going to be on the radio tour, which, by the way, you think you're gone, but they'll pull you back in. How can people recruit your services? How can they enlist your services? And are you still offering them after your farewell tour here?
Oh, absolutely. That's okay. I didn't say I was going to stop using the Looking Glass program for what I do with it, but I am going to stop the public broadcast type stuff.
Okay.
No, if they do if you want like a portfolio analysis, or if you want, any kind of investment analysis, here is something very important. Please listen to what I'm about to say. I am licensed, by the way, to be a financial advisor. I'm a Series 7 and a 63 FINRA. Okay. I know, despite being licensed, I do not purport myself in any way, shape, or form to be a conventional financial advisor. So people say, well, what the hell are you? I said, I am a guy with a really accurate program with a background in economics. All right, which if you've walked into some banks, you will realize, like when you sit down with the financial advisor, you're like, well, maybe the guy in the basement with the program, maybe he's a better option, or if you want a second opinion. Mm-hmm. I am happy to do, and I'm happy to report what the program finds as A, B, C, and D. Hey, maybe take a look at this. Maybe here's an idea. And if nothing else, use that data to go sit down with your FA, sit down with your broker. Not that people really even use those anymore, but sit down with your FA and you kind of say, hey, listen, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Because everybody's situation is different. Mm-hmm. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. All I can do is, like I said, if somebody hands me a portfolio and I did some work with a customer recently. He's a really awesome guy, heck of a nice guy, and kind of just gave him the heads up. And he was very forward with me and saying, like, it's too fast right now for me. It's too fast. I want out of the market. I was like, all right, that's cool. But gave him some very, very, very accurate information. But in terms of portfolio analysis, in terms of if people have specific questions, topics they want to research, it's not just limited to economics. All right. I've gotten questions from, probability of, earthquakes and stuff like that. And like I said, I do reserve the right to say no to certain, certain inquiries. But, for the most part, yeah, people are interested and they want to, like I said, again, economic advice or geopolitical advice or consultation. If you own a business and you want trend forecasting done, for the businesses you're in to see how to grow, the market space or identify trends that maybe competition hasn't identified yet? Oh, absolutely. Okay. That's exactly what I built the program for.
All right. And they can find you at your website. That's the best way to find you, is thearclightinstitute.com or .wordpress.com. Is it just .com or is it .wordpress.com?
Yeah, no, we own the domain. It's thearclightinstitute.com.
Okay. Okay. And it's ARC, people. There's no H in there. There's an H in light, and there's an H in the. I'm confusing everybody. It's thearclightinstitute.com. And then right on there, I can see, there's a little, a place where you can purchase, services and rent time or lease time with the Looking Glass program. And currently version 1.0 is available, and you are going to work and, soon to be offering version 3.0, skipping altogether 2.0.
Yep, they say greatness skips a generation, so we figured why break tradition? And the reality is, again, I invite people, questions, comments, ideas. I mean, some of the ideas that I've gotten come from customers, which is I really do enjoy. But as far as the what's I getting at this? Oh, once again, anybody that thinks that what I'm doing is like a publicity stunt or something like that. I usually forget to plug my own stuff on a show. Like the music comes on and I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, the arclightinstitute.com is pretty cool. Have a nice day.
Well, that's why I did that. Yeah. See?
That was pretty cool. We used to offer the EAMs in subscription format.
Okay.
I was doing 2 of them a month.
Okay.
Okay. And they're they're not newsletters. They're not like 1 and 2 page little things. They were anywhere between 20 to 40 pages per EAM.
Wow.
And we were doing that twice a month. And then a little voice in the back of my head said, you are going to go insane if you keep trying, with that pace. And I went, okay. So what I've done is I've offered them, we haven't produced a new one in I want to say about a month, but we have 2 things going. One of which is, we're selling them individually. Okay. $75 a pop. And that's in fairness to those that did have the monthly subscriptions, same price. 2 of those a month would have been $150, $75 a piece. Or we have the EAM deal of the century. How was that for a marketing voice? EAM deal of the century.
The deal of the century.
But wait, there's more. Act now. No, we have all of the EAMs. All 7 editions. There's actually 9 of them, by the way. I just forgot to put 2 of them up. And the Metals Investor's Guide, which really is kind of a written version of, a much more elaborate written version of what I just kind of try to communicate about the transference of wealth, inflation, how metals plays into that kind of thing. That's all available. One package purchase is $400. And
okay.
It's like I said, you're not getting a newsletter. You're basically getting a book.
Yeah, dissertations. Okay, and so for me, let's say it's me, and I don't have a portfolio, and I am interested in getting rolling. Do you take on novices, or are you strictly working with people who already have portfolios, who are very familiar with the market, or do you take on kindergartners like myself?
Honestly, I mean, I have one customer who's, not super familiar with investing with market. I can typically work. I like to think of myself as a pretty good teacher. I can work with pretty much any level. Do I work better with somebody that I go 800 miles an hour with and go, okay, here, and use all the lingo and the jargon? Yes, only out of just convenience, to me mostly. But yeah, I mean, if you're just getting started, absolutely. One of the things, I am kind of notoriously infamous for is being able to, or in a good way, of course, is to be able to do hopefully what I'm doing a good job of here, which is to go, hey, look, all this stuff looks complicated. It really isn't. So that's kind of one of the things that I pride myself on, is the ability to kind of, say, all right, here's what's going on. Or I work better when people ask me questions. It's like, well, I was thinking of investing in oil.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Or I was thinking of investing in, trading oil futures, or investing in gold, and, have that specific kind of thing, as opposed to somebody just calling up and going, how can I make money? It's like,
yeah.
Well,
me.
That's well, that's a little vague, to quote George Carlin.
I love George Carlin. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, all right. So basically you, I think, find inspiration when, informed parties are looking for advice. And, it seems that you enjoy learning and exchanging, your knowledge with people for a fee. And, it sounds well worth it to me, so okay, well, I want to jump back to metals for a minute. there was V wasn't on his show a couple weeks ago, and there was a gentleman that he had met on an airplane, just randomly. And this guy has some type of metal vault. A precious metals vault that basically you can store your precious metals, in his vault, and that's a good thing because I think they're making that, less legal, quote unquote legal up here in the States. So do you know who I'm talking about? I don't remember the guy's name.
I do not, and the one thing that I will be very forward about is I largely regard V as the expert on the overseas vaulting.
Okay.
He's got the contacts, he's got the knowledge for that. He's somebody I would go to and ask, hey, if theoretically and when, what's the best course of action there? Conceptually, yes. In terms of professing myself to be an expert on that, not really.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, I'm very clear about that in a lot of the EAMs too, and that's perhaps one of the only pieces that's missing out of the EAM is I simply do not have the contacts that he does, or the experience in the overseas vaulting by any capacity. I mean, in terms of forecasting valuations, trends, and prices, yeah, that I can certainly do.
Okay.
But to purport to be an expert in like overseas vaulting, the legalities associated with that, again, is something I would go to him and ask, like, all right, talk. This is the part where I shut up and, he talks. So
that's fair. That's fair because, specialization is key. Many of the times, if one takes on too much, the message can get lost. And so it's great that you have a network. Now, I had a couple of questions. One that I have right now is the ArcLight Institute straight up just Mike Rosecliff, or are there other people working with you? And is that a question you can answer?
No, it's obviously the program design and the architecture is primarily yours truly, but I do work and live with the someone who I lovingly call the esteemed assistant, who is not only my adult supervision, but she also happens to have a master's degree in microbiology, and she's got, put it this way, she's got all the fancy degrees and all the the college stuff where I look at and go like, whoa, that's really cool, because I have a 3-year associate's degree in business, and you say, well, what the hell is a 3-year degree? That's a 2-year degree when you screw off for a year.
Funny.
I am not an academic per se. However, no, she kind of helps me, especially during, I'll give you an example, like when Ebola was in kind of making like headlines and stuff like that. I sit down and I just go, all right, talk, I'll listen. And she cringes when I talk about any kind of conventional sciences, because I am the first to tell you when I don't know something. I may not know it, but I can sure as hell find somebody that does. And in the case of like microbiology and stuff, or any of the real science type stuff, and it's just somebody to bounce ideas off of that a lot of times looks at things a little different than I do. So there's me, and she's done some radio programs with me too, especially like I said when Ebola was like out of control, and kind of went like, all right, listen, it can do this, it can't do that, it theoretically could do this, because if you left me to that, I would have just been like, yeah, it seems pretty bad. Anyway, moving right along,
Right.
So. And
may we have her name?
First name esteemed, last name assistant.
Nice. Hello, esteemed assistant, if you're in there. She said she was doing radio, so I was just wondering if there was some way I could refer to some interviews.
Sean David Morton coined that term, by the way.
Esteemed assistant. Yeah, that sounds like a Sean David Morton term.
The esteemed assistant, and but she's been tremendously helpful. And like I said, I mean, for me, talk about things that I respect and I admire. It's like, I look at 6 years worth of essentially like next stop medical school, and it's like, whoa, that's pretty cool.
Wow.
Like I look, you put a microscope and a bunch of slides in front of me, and I'm just going to sit there and just go like, look, moving goo, cool. Yeah. All right, how can I make money off it? It's kind of, and like I said, she helps with a lot of the, what I call, and ironically enough, there are podcasts also available. When I say podcast, I just did, not iTunes Store, I just did direct download podcast, and I have to say that was her idea, and it was an effort to preserve her own sanity, because they're basically the diatribes that I go on at 3 o'clock in the morning after half a bottle of vodka. And she's like, you should really record those and sell that, Mr. Make Money. And I was like, okay, that's a good idea. So those are available, but no,
those are available on your website.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm seeing it right now. It says Got Podcast. Very cute.
Got Podcast is right. And I mean, the reality is, primarily the software, the architecture, design of the program is yours truly. Okay. And, and that's pretty much the way I would like to keep it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, there's the term boutique. That's a big buzzword now in Wall Street, boutique investment firm. Mm-hmm. What I do is certainly niche and certainly boutique. And again, it plays that. Don't you want to be rich and famous? Don't you want to be, you have your name in lights and, you're going to have, predictions by the ArcLight Institute? It's like, no. My idea of a good time is a Jimmy Buffett concert, okay, and a lot of Corona. I don't want the attention. I don't want the notoriety. My idea, like I said, is to have some really good customers, some really cool clients, do my own trading and stuff like that, and ride off into the sunset, so to speak.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So a question actually posted from a mutual friend of ours is where does it all end, and what about the timing of it all? So I think we actually kind of covered the timing of when everything happened. So, but okay. So we come to next year. We're in 2016, and it's Q3, Q4, and the quote unquote crap hit the fan. Okay. Then what? What happens then, in your opinion? Because, you eloquently described, I don't know, guy shooting other guy. So let's say we evolve. Well, I don't know about evolve, but we come out of, killing each other, just to basically throw it out there. And then whatever's left, there's a few pieces of the Gen Pop still sitting around, after, the collapse and everyone's starving and shooting everyone and basically, the end of a really bad film or nightmare. What happens then? What do you see?
There's, and I kind of, I got pretty passionate about it this morning on Wells's show, so I'm going to kind of, try to deliver the same, consistent message at this point, and that is as such. I said, first of all, there's this term that I really doesn't have anything to do with anything, but there's a term globalist, and that's thrown around the alt news community quite a bit. Globalists, mm-hmm. Okay? Evil, the globalists, right? Surprise, we're all globalists. Thanks to technology, the speed of information, perception-wise, the globe has shrunk. Not literally, but perception-wise, the globe has shrunk. So surprise, surprise, technically, we're all globalists, okay? We purchase products that are from, manufactured in other parts of the world. So this notion of, there's the globalists and then there's the rest of us. You know what? At this point in time, at one level or another, we're all globalists. That's first. Second, in terms of where it ends, or what's the end game? And as far as I can tell, and this is based upon the Looking Glass data, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to set the one-day record for usages of the word chaos in internet radio, because I'm probably about 50 into Wells's show already, saying chaos. But there's this expression that's floating around in this notion of the New World Order, right? And a phrase that is often associated with them. It says, of chaos comes order. Okay? Mm-hmm. Well, surprise, surprise, that's kind of how every system in the universe works, is the natural force of chaos, which I think is what we're seeing now. And that's why people often ask me, aren't you nervous about the government listening to you? And I go, if that's the case, they should offer me a job, first of all. I said, second of all, out of order comes chaos. Well, surprise, surprise. Okay? Every system, especially you look in nature, systems, you got an island full of mosquitoes and, mosquitoes and frogs, let's say, and the frogs eat the mosquitoes. Well, if the mosquitoes start to die off, the frogs learn to either eat something else or evolve in some other way, or they die. That's chaos, and chaos is neither, that's such it sounds like such a bad word. Chaos, right? It's horrible, and the reality is there are times when chaos is necessary, and chaos returns systems to long-term growth and self-sustainability. What's going on right now in terms of economics is simply a very complex system, and chaos can affect very complex systems or very simplistic systems. What we're seeing is, I consider it what ultimately comes out the other end is going to be the rejuvenation of society and the ability to move forward.
Survival of the fittest, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Survival of the fittest, but I think fittest at this point takes on a different tone. Okay. Up until recently, we're in nature. Okay, survival of the fittest oftentimes has to do with physical strength. All right, and I said this gets into something a little deeper in economics, which is called the paradigm shift of value. All right.
The paradigm shift of value.
Yep. I'm just full of euphemisms today.
I'm loving it.
I'm having fun. I'm full of euphemisms. But the paradigm shift of value, I'm going to use an example here. Let's say you and I owned a farm, a couple of thousand acres, right? And we wanted to grow corn, let's say. 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, the most important commodity that we could have beyond gold, beyond silver, beyond oil, is human labor. I pick things up and put them down. All right. Thank you for laughing at that. Physical labor in factories, physical labor in service industries, physical labor, especially in agriculture, was the premium. Right now, cut to 2015, present day, you and I, we could operate a farm of several thousand acres, probably with a staff of about 10 people, and half of them could take the day off. With the automation of, industrialization and machines and your GPS guided autopilot tractors and combine mowers that can mow, massive swaths in the field, the industrialization. So the commodity, when I say the revaluation of value, which there's a good one for you, revaluation of value, is moving from a paradigm of where physical labor was the commodity. Now it's more of an intellectual thing. It's more of where intellect or creativity or ability to adapt to a speed of information world, the ability to adapt to, and when I say speed of information, I mean, you have to, I think at some point, I mentioned this on John's show this morning, you have to look at Asperger's and autism in any form, not so much as an illness. And I am not a doctor by any capacity. And like I said, the EA's got all the cool science degrees, but I think you have to start to consider, at the very least, those as adaptations to a speed of information world. If you think about the speed, the amount of input, sensory intellectual input that we experience in a 1 hour period today, would be equivalent to a week in 1980, let's say. You wake up in the morning, by the time you look at your phone, you're looking at an LCD display, you look at your TV, you turn your TV on, you got your tablet, you have it on, you're on the train, you got your tablet, you got your laptop open. There's this constant barrage of information. Okay? So Asperger's and autism, that's a pretty significant change in environment, and adaptation, as it is described, is simply becoming, how shall I put this delicately? Is it becoming not more attuned, but becoming better able to function and advance in a given environment? Now, that's a pretty significant environmental change, the speed of information. So I think, only humanity would be, I don't want to say dumb enough, but only humanity would be, in some cases, shallow enough to want to, say, oh, autism, it's a sickness. Oh, Asperger's, it's a sickness. And all of a sudden you have a puzzle piece on the back of your car, and somehow that's a merit of your parenting ability. It's like, has anybody stopped to think that maybe all of a sudden this outbreak of autism has something to do with the environment to which we live? And that's, I think, one of those things that need be explored at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But in terms of, adaptation, I mean, you laugh at I pick things up and put them down. We're moving from an entire economy that's largely designed to reward and function physical labor. Well, thanks to industrialization, thanks to automation, and thanks to technological development, is it good or bad? You're talking to a guy that spent a long time, with technology and IT and stuff like that. So in my humble opinion, yeah, it's good. There's some things that I know that I'm not going to talk about on the radio that may not be so good, but for the most part, as society advances forward, you say, well, what's the end game look like? And John brought up, he goes, is it going to look anything like George Orwell's 1984? Is it going to be like this kind of quasi bizarro land utopian society where, there's Big Brother everywhere, that kind of thing? And the answer is probably not. And the reason I say that, and I'm going to, once again, here comes the compassionate side of Mike. You ready?
Aw, yes.
Here comes Mike's warm and fuzzy side. All right. I think of the world right now, and this is not me saying I'm the smartest guy on the planet, but the world right now, I kind of look at it like a third grade class. All right.
Okay.
You got a couple of gifted students that are sitting around bored out of their mind and when I say gifted, I mean the best and the brightest, brilliant minds that could work on things like a space program or, the privatization of the space industry, real alternative energy solutions. You have the best and the brightest minds that are just kind of like there at the moment, and then you have, a portion of society that's average. And then you have that bottom 30% that's like cross-eyed and drooling and talking to the ceiling fan. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. But right now, government, people complain about big government. Well, guess what? Think of government as the teacher. Okay? They have to cater to the bottom 30% and the bottom half of the average. So we've all been through third grade. If you remember, there's always those one or two really smart kids that are just sitting there kind of like with their hand on their head going like, please get me out of here. And they're getting average grades, not because they're not, they're not dumb kids. They're not stupid. Bored. They're bored. So evolution to me says, okay, you want less government? Great. You want less regulation, less monitoring? Well, guess what? Go back to that welfare culture. Okay? What we're seeing coming, and this is, once again, brace yourself. I know, this is my compassionate side. Okay. It's a natural progression forward. What we're seeing, it's like I said, in a quasi-fourth dimensional sense. It's like the needle, there was this orchestrated path, and all of a sudden the needle popped out of the groove on the record. And now what we're seeing is a force that there isn't a government that can control it. There isn't a banking system that can control it. What we're seeing is real chaos. And that real chaos returns all systems, be them economic, biological, or otherwise, to a level where they can be long-term sustainable, long-term growth, the what's next. So in a roundabout kind of way, if talk about the vaguity in an answer sometimes, the what's next is what's next.
I see.
And that's, again, keep in mind, I can jump up and down and go, oh, there's going to be revolution, there's going to be this, there's going to be martial law. And it's, what? The reality of the situation is what we're seeing now is beyond the control of any government. It's beyond the control of any one system. And that's how what you're seeing is real chaos. And that is a completely kind of nonlinear abstract concept. But ultimately, whatever comes out the other side, it's, I kind of laugh. I said, if there is this such thing as a divine creator, well, he did screw one thing up, is that we need less people on the planet now. In terms of, you look at where we are as a society in terms of automation and industrialization. It's like the pyramid was built upside down, in terms of population expansion. So, but the point of the story though is, do I say that's good or bad? I think the easy answer always has a good guy and a bad guy. There's always has to be a protagonist and an antagonist. You see it in religion, you see it in science
duality. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. The
good,
Carl
bad,
Jung,
right, wrong.
Right. Mm-hmm. Good, bad, right, exactly. You need that easy narrative, and that's why most movies,
mm-hmm.
And most theology, it's, good guy, bad guy,
mm-hmm.
good, evil, right, wrong. And somewhere in the middle lies the real answer, which is necessary sometimes, not to say that, I am completely devoid of any feeling towards anything, but for the most part, I think we need to look at it, or at least to appreciate what's going on right now. You have to almost have this kind of distant, arbitrary view of what's going on. And I think what we're seeing at this point now is exactly that. There's been a concerted attempt to try to manipulate the chaos in favor of one or the other, and the thing about chaos is the more you try to manipulate it, the more erratic it becomes. Not to say that, there's really not much anybody could do at this point anyway. It's sometimes it could be difficult to quantify in words, but the attempt to repress, the natural progression of things like the human mind, let's say, the natural progression of things like, understanding of evolution and stuff like that, creates a backdraft effect, just like when you repress the price of metals or you repress, any valuation of a commodity, you create a backdraft effect. Which is, it may seem like the fire's out a little bit, and then, you crack the door a little bit, and all of a sudden the whole building explodes.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what, as far as I can tell, the attempt to manipulate
chaos,
that forward the forward progress, that forward motion, has created quite the interesting situation here on, planet Earth, so to speak. And, the reality is, with Looking Glass, thankfully, I'm able to say, hey, listen, this is what the program sees. This is kind of the information. I've been really accurate. Hey, for 7 months, I shared what was going on. And now it's like, okay, have a nice day, everybody. Exit mic, stage left. And that's one of the things I'm looking into right now, and it has nothing to do with my like or dislike of the United States. I've lived here, and it's been great. But from what I've seen, and again, ask me how seriously I take the work and how seriously do I take the program, and the answer is very. Enough that, like I said, it's passport and visas time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely leaning toward that as well. It seems that anyone with any finger on the pulse is definitely looking to relocate, at least for X amount of years, and then kind of come back when there's time to reset, if you will. Here's a question from the chat room. Ask Mike if he would give credence to the power of the manipulators.
Credence to the powers of the manipulators. That sounds very sci-fi. I don't have an answer to that one.
It's a great question. So in other words, it's quite a question. Just something to think about. Credence to the power of the manipulators. Do you give them credit? In other words, it's more or less of a natural progression is what you're saying.
Yeah,
I think.
The way I see chaos is a force, an unstoppable one. You can delay it. You can try to manipulate it. You can try to slow it down. And what you do is, ultimately, that is, as far as I can tell, and I look at this from a nonlinear mathematics standpoint, I look at it from an observational, socioeconomic, socioanthropological standpoint, as I look at this evolutionary force, this chaos, this force that returns all systems to self-sustainability, as no longer something that can be manipulated.
I see.
I
was going to say it sounds like an oxymoron. Manipulated chaos. It's basically, one of the most perfect oxymorons I've ever heard.
Well, yeah. I mean, you think of the term like organized chaos, right? I mean, that is a really good name for a boat, by the way. I got to make a note of that. Organized chaos, because it's almost so comical. And organized chaos is what most Americans and folks that follow mainstream media are used to, is organized chaos. For example, and I hate to use this word anymore because it's just been so abused in alt news, false flag events. Mm-hmm. That attempt to create a perception, okay? A groupthink perception of, I'll give you an example. I mean, when you could tell you're looking at something that's orchestrated when, look at what's going on in the Middle East, right? You have, every other day now we hear about, terrorists beheading Christians. It's always, now it's Muslims beheading Christians, and that religious narrative is constantly, that's an attempt at organized chaos.
Mm-hmm. You're so right.
A false flag of, terror attack. Like, I kind of joke around about ISIS, okay? I said, you know what? I said, I'm a pretty enterprising-minded kind of guy. I want to open up a Toyota dealership in the middle of the desert somewhere in, like, Syria. All right? Because I want to know where they got those 2012 and 2013 Toyota Hilux trucks from. With the Border Patrol upfit package on them, but nonetheless, okay, yeah, right, with the 30 cal machine gun mounts that have the adapters on them. These are the things I notice without looking glass, and it's just like, seriously at this point, and I want to open up a screen printing T-shirt and flag shop right next door because apparently they're like the best dressed terror group ever in history. Matching T-shirts and flags and banners and
as a matter of fact, I have to interject. When I first saw, one of the first graphics or photos that had been released of ISIS and the poster boy front guy, I thought, wow, that looks like a boy band. I mean, seriously, that's exactly what I thought.
ISIS, right?
The boy band.
Here's how I look at the whole ISIS thing. Okay, at this point,
I'm so glad you don't think I'm crazy for that. Yeah, I really did. I mean, people thought it was insensitive, but they look like a boy band to me.
No, with RPGs and SKSs and Drugonauts. It's like Backstreet Boys with superior firepower.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of the situation, though, is like I look at that and I have no feeling anymore. I look at that and I go, if you can't figure it out, what do I have to tell you for? And talk about one of the reasons I'm not going to be doing the broadcast anymore. But I go, okay, so here's my two options. Okay, option one, I don't like either of them, but option one, I am left to believe that the greatest intelligence agencies on the planet, with all this, drone technology and all the spy satellites and spy planes, somehow missed, like this terror group came out of nowhere, right? That's option one. Option two. So as a capable United States military, we're able to do drone strikes with a fair amount of precision. Okay, we're able to do long range missile strikes with a fair amount of precision. But apparently they can't find ISIS, despite them driving around in long convoys of brand new trucks with their headlights on. Well, I almost slipped. Sorry, Ken.
You didn't slip.
I self-radio edited. That was pretty cool.
It was awesome. Hey, just to interject, we've only got 1 minute left, so I want to let you wrap up, and I apologize for it. Now I want to talk for like 2 more hours, but anyway. I thank you for being my guest. Thank you so much, Mike. So anyway, wrap that up and let's tell everyone again, arclightinstitute.com and your Twitter is at, that's the arclightinstitute.com and your Twitter is at arclightinst.
At arclightinst. Yep, I will probably be doing the Twitter thing for another couple of weeks, but I encourage.
You are gone. Wow.
Yeah, I am encouraging that people, if they're curious, download one of the EAMs. If you like what you see, download the package. Or if you download 1 or 2 of them and you really like them, email me. I'm not a greedy guy, but I am a capitalist. I worked real hard on this program. So, in terms of really what's going on now, if you have, like I said, specific questions, you want to do commissioned reports, I try to do those as quickly as possible. Sometimes I can do them in a few days. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks. It depends on the availability of information and so on and so forth. But I thank you for having me on.
Oh, thanks. It was a really great time and very informative, Mike. Mike Rosecliff, everyone, and it's been at this moment here at Revolution Radio. Okay, thanks again, man.
No worries.
Listening to Revolution Radio.